Hello, and welcome back to the Design Plus podcast. I'm your host, Raquel Sands, holistic career and lifestyle guide. And today I'd like to take us back to the beginning, to when, where, how, why I started creating Career Coach as a business, how all of that came about, who were the people, the friends, the experiences, all of that really started to shape this path that I've created and that I'm walking down. So let's get into it. So I think the first thing to really start with is kind of alluding to an episode that I talked all about my career journey, job hopping, what I lovingly and what I like to call being a professional job hopper, finding the opportunities, the exits, the pivots throughout my career, because I realized quite rapidly, like right after college, after one or two jobs, that the field I had majored in, the field I was going to dedicate my career to, was not the one for me, which was technical writing. And then soon after that, figuring out that I would have to make changes to my lifestyle, to my career, my certifications, in order to get into the career that I did want to get into, which was more creative. I think now it's just marketing, but for me, it was so much more than that, because there are so many different levels to communications. There's internal, which is just focused within the company to the employees. There's external communications, which is largely what we see in ads and public relations, what the audience and people around the globe can see. There's specific niches within that. There's design and the writing and editing, and there's so many different parts. So I wanted to get into all of those worlds, but didn't know how, and how to start with who to network and all of those things. And that's kind of the second, I guess, level or chapter. And then throughout all of that exploration and asking questions and changing jobs, and throughout all of that trial and error, making career or professional connections, making friendships, acquaintanceships with people who were my age, who were of other cultures, who came from different backgrounds and had other career aspirations, and getting the opportunity to help them with as little as doing their resume, editing their resume, giving them interview tips and tricks, and doing LinkedIn profile edits, to things as large as, well, for me at the time, as large as helping people figure out whether they could do a move and financial support. Adding in some spirituality, some like tools with the oracle and tarot decks and astrology. So all of these things, from my own experience of changing jobs to changing industries and learning as I go, to helping other people do all those things. I've done all of that for 10 years, but I haven't felt that it was right for me to say I've been a career coach for 10 years. Maybe for myself, definitely. But it's this kind of weird, interesting, what do we call this? When we're not, there's this expression, or there's this idea that a writer isn't a writer unless they're published, unless they are earning money, or if they're popular, even well recognized, and are best-selling authors. So that's kind of the feeling that I get with being called a career coach. I haven't wanted to call myself that because it wasn't a legal formalized business, and I didn't have formalized offers, and I wasn't making even part-time income with all of the support that I was doing. But regardless, I have been in the career coaching world, let's say, for 10 plus years, using myself as the number one and constant guinea pig through all the things that I tell other people to do. I do them myself. I'm a firm believer in practicing what is preached. If I say something, I should have done it myself before I go ahead and recommend it to someone else or not recommend it to someone else. That's not to say that if I recommend something or I make suggestions or if something has worked for me, it may or may not work for someone else. But I really am a firm proponent of having the experience, having that that embodiment, that energy, having someone do something first, experienced it before just making a blanket statement or just even reading about it. Because a lot of people can say things online or recommend things without having done the work, without actually having gone through all the loopholes and all of the maybe obstacles. So that's just something about me and my philosophy, and you'll know that if you've worked with me before. I just really like to be able to practice what I preach and not make just random recommendations or just trusting Google, for instance, because Google really spits out things that are the most searchable. You know, there's a whole strategy now on SEO, search engine optimization. So really wanting to get people's eyes on things, not necessarily because that information or data is the most well researched or it's the most reputable. It's just maybe the most popular or has the biggest brand. So getting into more of how I started working with others, because if you want to hear more about all of my jobs and the different jobs that I've had in different industries, I'm talking about from dog walking to being a yoga teacher, to being a yoga studio manager, to being a freelancer, working with local companies in the Washington, D.C. area, health companies, finance companies, as a freelancer. I've also worked as a government contractor. I mean, if you want to hear all of those details, there's another episode. In this episode, I want to go into how I started working with people and how I started figuring out what I wanted to provide as a service, and why I think those things are important, how they are impactful and useful. So after, I think, my first few jobs, maybe 2016, 2 years out of college, I started freelancing more with my accountant, actually. He was my first, I think, client, needing help with his website, getting web copy. And I started to see how I could provide value, how I could support other businesses without kind of quote unquote officially going through that traditional process of applying for a job. And I really liked, I think that was the first kind of little seed of, oh yeah, I could work for myself and I could just do my marketing and, you know, create this path on my own without having to apply for jobs, go back to school, get the right recommendations. I could just create this path and slowly start to build it, slowly start to get the clients. So that's what I did. So I started freelancing as a marketing communications consultant in 2016. I worked with a few different companies in the DC area. My accountant, like I said, when I was doing taxes, he just noticed that what my title was communications, and he said, "Oh, we need a bilingual communications person." So it was great. I was recognized in that. Another client was a maintenance company, and this was another local DC company where the focus was maintenance. So providing maintenance services to other big companies like Deloitte and other tech type companies. So I worked with the business owner of that maintenance company to create proposals and more web copy. And back in the day, at that time, they still used a lot of print. So creating the business cards and brochures to leave on doors and things like that. So that was kind of my first, I would say, experience building kind of a business, creating a side gig, and just getting more exposure of what it felt like to work for myself, set my own hours, my price. But specifically with career, as I started to still struggle with my business, or not my business, I'm sorry, with my career, because I had realized that I didn't want to do technical writing, but I still didn't, I didn't want to lose the amount of money I was making with the technical writing, and I didn't know how I was going to kind of cross that bridge to get into that more creative communications, broader marketing space. I wasn't ready or willing to take a pay cut. So I stuck with doing technical writing, but I made some really good friends and acquaintances, and they started asking me for help. They noticed that my LinkedIn profile had 300 or so follows or connections, and I was pretty active putting on posts, and that got engagement. So they wanted their support. They're like, "Hey, can you do my LinkedIn profile too?" And so I started just supporting other people's LinkedIn profiles and resumes when asked if a friend or colleague, they had the trust, the confidence in me, which was so beautiful. I felt so honored that they would trust in me their kind of career journey, that external facing resource that not could make or break, but could really show and highlight, all of the awesome things that they did or they've done in their jobs. So I started doing that, and that wasn't something that I sought out. It was just something that whenever we would start talking about work, as people usually do in the office space, or when they're in the, in their cubicles or whatever it is, people would start to bring it up. Okay, I'm looking for another job, or I'm not quite sure if this is the end all be all for me. Could you take a look at my resume? Or what are some things that you do as a communications person? So that's what it started as, just kind of drips, slow, but consistent. And it wasn't until I think 2018, there were two roles, 2018 and 2019, or somewhere around that time, because I've had so many jobs within 1 year, I should say, that they kind of blur together sometimes. So within those 2 years, I had two different roles that really, I think, solidified how I really help in the career space. So one role was I was working full-time as an English editor. And this role for me is special to my heart because um, the whole role was a contract, government contract opportunity. So when it's a contract, it's a limited time. Depending on the company, it could be from a year to 5 years, 10 years, however long they need that role to exist within that project or that team. So I was an English editor. So what that meant was that this project was putting together 7 teams, 7 different language teams, and there would be one English editor who would review all the different English translations of how do I explain? Of learning those languages. So, for example, one of the language teams was Brazilian Portuguese, and so they would have tests and writings, all sorts of resources that were in Brazilian Portuguese, because there's 2 types that I know of Portuguese. There's Portuguese from Portugal and Brazilian Portuguese. And so all these different written materials in Brazilian Portuguese, and then those materials would be translated into English. And I, or the English editor, the role they were looking for, which I ended up filling, would review all of the English translations to make sure that it met grammatical, syntax, it made sense, basically. And that it wasn't in British English or Australian English, but in United States American English. The reason that this project existed and it brought together these 7 different language teams was because the company, the purpose of the company was to provide instruction and support for those people who worked for the government or worked for the private sector and needed language support. So they would go to, let's say a diplomat would need to learn Urdu or Pashto, I think either Afghanistan or Pakistan language. And so they would need to go through these courses. They would need to learn in an expedited, quick amount of time. And so all of these different materials would help them with that course. I mean, of course, with an instructor and all of that, but we were creating the courses and the materials for that. So I was so excited for this role because it was a very unique, it's not quite often that an opportunity presents itself for someone to work with such a global, such an international team. I mean, we were all located in the same office. We're all worked in person 5 days a week. But I had never worked with people who were, who all of them were immigrants, and who all of them were instructors or somehow they were teachers, professors of their language, so they were experts of their language. And I had never worked with so many different languages before. I'm Latina. I grew up speaking Spanish. But that was it. And in southern Florida, it was Spanish or English. Then moving up north to this DC area, I got exposed to more Asian languages, Thai, Filipino, Vietnamese, that I hadn't seen or heard in southern Florida. But I had not been exposed to Middle Eastern languages or even Brazilian Portuguese. There are different types of French in certain African countries. So all of that was just amazing for me. And being able to work with immigrants firsthand, because when the contract was coming to a close, a lot of them didn't know what they wanted to do, whether to stay in this kind of language teaching world or start their own business or create a whole new path for themselves, see what other work professionally in an office is what I'm trying to say. They didn't want to do I think it's blue collar. I forget which one is which, but I think it's blue collar work, which is nothing bad, but this is just, that's what they wanted. They wanted something different for themselves. So I started to work with their resumes and start working with one colleague in particular who wanted to start their own business. And so helping with the logo and reading the contracts and the whole LLC formation, coming up with the slogan. And again, all of my kind of previous freelance experience came back in handy, as well as adding on with doing the LinkedIn, doing the resume. And it was just this complete kind of business and job, professional, like both offers, both services encompassing. And that was so great. I mean, I still worked with this person with their business, I think for 1 or 2 years after being their just communications consultant. But it was great. I had not done, I think, a complete service like that. And I think a lot of times so much pressure and expectation is set on us to figure out, what it is that we want or what it is that is going to serve us. But if we're just in response, if we're just showing up as ourselves, and showing our capacity and capability, the opportunities, as cliche as it may sound, do come up. They do appear. Because I wasn't looking for this complete, service kind of opportunity that showed me my own expertise and potential, but it did. This other person saw it in me, and it reaffirmed, and it just continued to nurture this flame that I had already started in other roles with other colleagues and acquaintances. And so it just further expanded on that. So that's the first role when I was an English editor, that I really started to see the breadth and the depth and just all of the potential in being a business and career coach. The second role was before COVID in 2019. I worked for a local hospitality company. And this one, I would say, is my technically first marketing job, working for a marketing team. So each one of us had our own different specialities and functions. I was the writer and editor of the team, so all things would come to me to be grammatically checked to make sure that it made sense, condensed and rewritten, all this sorts of stuff. So I love that job. The people were great. Again, working prior to COVID, all my jobs were in office 5 times a week. But there was this one colleague and I that we developed a friendship. It was really nice, really positive. We were like, if you have ever seen that, they would have these water coolers in the office, and people would just stand around and chat at the water cooler. She and I did that, but with tea. Like, we would always go to this one spot in the office and make our tea and have a nice chat and literally spill the tea, talk about whatever is happening in our lives, but also professionally. And so she started asking. We started to work on, I don't know if work is the best word, but start to really develop a trust with each other. And I would bring my tarot cards, my oracle deck, and do readings for her impromptu, specifically about her work and her, life, the path she's walking down, until she asked for advice on moving to another state and doing a budgeting. And once again, the resume, LinkedIn review. And so I did. And I really, in this moment, or at that moment, it felt so I don't think it ever gets um, old, this feeling of honor and humility, because I think it takes a lot of courage for the other person to ask for help and ask for support. But then also, I take it with great care that this person has asked me and in some way or another has chosen me for my insights and my perspective, because they see something in my personality, in my values, in the way I've lived my life. Because I remember talking to this person about all my different jobs and all the different things that I've learned and carried with me throughout. I think at that point it had been, let me think, 7 years out of school. So that kind of offer, that kind of combined the spirituality with the tarot and astrology and oracle decks with the tangible, kind of practical pieces of reviewing the LinkedIn and resume, and even going as far as doing a budgeting for what it might look like to get another job in a new state and adjusting for lifestyle in that other state and all sorts of things. That was, I think, the second biggest moment that really solidified that all of my experiences and all the things that I was accumulating along the way was not only serving me or helping me in my own journey, but really truly helping other people along the way. And it was such a light bulb moment for me during COVID that I got laid off. And I thought, you know what? Now that, COVID was happening, I thought, what is something that I would love to do? And knowing that I knew I could work for myself, because it didn't bother me to take initiative and to kind of constantly be on top of all the administrative and logistical stuff. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed running my own show, for a matter of speaking. But more than just having my own business, I really wanted it to mean something to me, to mean something to others. I really wanted to be able to be of service, and that my services were for the betterment, were for improving, empowering, grounding other people on their path. So in 2020, like I said, during COVID, when I got laid off from that job, I was working at the hospitality type company, in the marketing department, all of that. I decided to start formalizing my business, and not necessarily the freelancing piece, but really creating a service, creating different offers, and working as a coach. So I went on this whole path of business learning. I took 2 years to figure out how to run a business, more marketing training, but specifically now for business, and how my bandwidth and like the way I work, all of that. It took time to really figure out. And so now I can say that for the past year and a half, I've been officially, formally, a career coach. And I love it. I love being able to share my insights, be vulnerable, practice that vulnerability, show that vulnerability with you all, and share all of the pitfalls, quote unquote, mistakes or setbacks, obstacles that have actually pushed me into the direction that was meant for me, that really is the path that I think shows my attributes, my qualities, my potential, and all of that good stuff. But then also is useful and is empowering. And I'm not just selling, random, I don't know, um, I think on YouTube or on Instagram, there's a lot of ads for, I don't know, random things like I one time saw this mouse that another career coach was selling, that if you buy this mouse, the mouse is just going to move. That's all the function, that's all it's supposed to do, is just move a little bit, so that if you have a remote job or if you're in the office and you just need to look like you're working, whether you're the program that you use is green, like the light is green to show that you're online, that's why the mouse just moves, so that it just appears that you're working. That for me has never resonated, selling things like that. I really wanted my my services and my business to be meaningful, to be true to myself, to my experiences, and to other people who don't want, I don't know, a $5 mouse. Not to say that that might not be useful, I guess, but in the large scheme of things, in the whole, looking at the whole scope of our life, all the different things that we're looking at, our career, our relationships, our health, I wanted what I offer, what I create, to be useful and to be, like I said, empowering, uplifting, because there's so much that I think there could be shortcuts, or there can be like cheap or economical things that we can do to get ahead, but in the long run, they might not be as effective, as resonant. They might not really be what we need, but because we're out of desperation, out of the urgency, we're just reacting and trying to get some momentum going. We end up buying these mini courses or books or quizzes and tests and I don't know, all sorts of things, to just kind of fill that void, or kind of just feel that we've done something, we've addressed something. So I didn't want to just be a Band-Aid. I really wanted to create the medicine, the cure, the effective, a long, multi-effective approach to careers in this ever-changing landscape of the job market, of careers, that does not match with, the landscape that our parents, that our grandparents, that our uncles and aunts and other family members walked into, especially if our families are immigrants, or if we ourselves are immigrants, or we're first generation. There's so much more nuance to it, and I really wanted to be that bridge, fill that gap, to continue, as I said, to be of service, and share, support, uplift, and all of that good stuff. So unofficially, I've been in the career guiding, coaching world since I started. I myself, like I said, I was my first guinea pig and client and student and all of that. But then I've been fortunate and blessed and lucky enough to also meet professional colleagues, work colleagues, and also friends and family members who wanted also the support that I could offer. And all of that, in the past 10 years, I've been able to now get to this point of formally, officially offering those services in a way that hopefully is budget friendly, supporting you all in your economical state, wherever you might be with that, but then also supporting my work and helping it grow. And then also supporting you all mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that the tools and the principles and all of that I talk about are useful and impactful for your personal life and your professional life. which that's why I always say career and lifestyle, because I think they work together. They're actually it's one unit. It's not two separate things. And here we are now. So if you would like to hear more and you're curious to know all of my career background, there's another episode, like I said, that I go into that in detail. I also have a YouTube channel where I expand a lot on these ideas. One of the most popular ideas so far, or episodes I should say, has been about the yoga philosophies and using those as guidelines to support our career journeys. So those sorts of standout points I expand on YouTube. So if you're more visual, or if you'd like to support me on another channel, go ahead and check out my YouTube. And of course, if you would like my one-on-one support, direct support from me, you can go ahead and check out my website at miriamraquelsands.com. Currently in 2024, I have 2 specific offers that may change if you hear this episode at a later time, at another time. And one is just the LinkedIn resume and then career recommendations. So all of that is one offer. The second offer is all of that plus 4 sessions with me, a fake, quote unquote, fake interview where I am the recruiter, interviewer, and we go through to make sure that you are set up for success, and we go through a coaching kind of interview experience, and then also interview prep. So all of the best practices and recommendations for the different types of interview you might face, experience once you apply for a job and you're on the job market. So those are my 2 current offers. And if you're not ready for that, or it's not the time, I also have a Google document where if you'd like some just immediate career support, you just have a few questions, you can leave your questions anonymously. It's a private document that I manage, and I aim to respond within 24 to 48 hours. So I hope all those different resources and ways to work with me are helpful. Please leave me a comment and subscribe. And until next time, be well.